Hang on a second. Let's bring that there. See, gotta have it in front. Looks better. I'm gonna make this bigger. Oh man, you know what? Okay, I was gonna say I don't remember their names, but it's Arden Hart and Dr. Ben. Arden and Ben. Okay, so I'm minding my own business. I'm working. I did a live stream for 2.5 hours this morning, and someone said I should call on the line today, and I said no, it's over. It's usually when I'm streaming. Then I looked. Oh no, it's at 3 o'clock. So I'm busy doing my work, and then listening to see if I could get in to the line show while I'm working. Didn't think it would be possible, but I tried. I went into the live stream chat. Welcome if you're new here, by the way. Welcome. You're at home. You found the right place. And Stephanie, who I've talked to before, I think was very nice to me in the live stream chat, but a couple other mods weren't. I was timed out twice for asking, I think I asked 2 questions. Then I was timed out once for repeating back the rules. And I knew right away that, okay, everybody here knows me, it seems like. Or at least a lot of people know me. The mods know me. The hosts know me. As you will find out, the hosts know me. And I'm thinking, oh, no. This is going to be a challenge. But I like challenges. And so my goal was to find points of agreement. So I called into the online version, like using the internet, not using the phone, and talked to the call screener. The call screener said, what do you want to talk about? And I said, points of agreement. That's what I want to talk about. I want to see if people like them and people like me can actually agree on stuff and then talk about disagreements as well, but see if areas of compromise. I think I told the call screener that too, areas of compromise. But maybe I didn't. I don't know. Don't remember. But I want to say this, and I'm going to play the whole thing. I'm not going to edit anything out. I'm still using the live link, so it actually might go away at some point. But I recorded the whole thing as well, so if it does, I got a backup plan. But it was a disaster. I tried as hard as I could to be polite, nice, give in when I think I was legitimately wrong, and I did. And you'll see where that was. But just the animosity towards me was unbelievable. I showed both my kids this. What you're about to see. My 20-year-old daughter and my 17-year-old son. I showed them this. I said, I want your honest opinion. Didn't say anything. They just sat and watched. And my daughter and my son looked at me like, what's wrong with them? Why are they so mad? And at one point, Ben talked about me trapping him or something, and my daughter said, he trapped himself. I didn't say anything. I mean, I always like to get a younger opinion on, I use my kids a lot to get their feedback, because they'll tell me, anybody who's a parent here and who has kids, your kids will be blunt with their parents and say, Dad, you're a goofball here. Dad, you're a jerk here. My kids didn't say that with this, because I honestly tried, but I felt like I was walking on eggshells to the extreme the whole entire time. Anyhow, let's watch it. I'll definitely stop it in certain points where I went wrong and where I went right.
In a second, who I've been seeing in the chat, who's been annoying the living shit out of me, but
I know who you're talking
it
about.
might be a productive call. The stated topic is.
Yeah, annoying the living shit out of me. Like, I think just my presence annoys them.
Potentially a point of understanding and agreement. So we're going to try it. We're going to bring in Doug, Pinecreek. Doug, you are live on the line. What do you got for us? Hello. Man, are you there? Did you hit?
Can you hear me?
Now we can hear you.
Oh, sorry, I had my mic muted. Amateur rookie mistake.
No worries.
But first of all, I honestly don't want to cause any trouble here. I'm getting the impression that I'm being viewed as a troublemaker, and I don't want that. I mean, for me, there's only two real issues to talk about, and that is the sports thing, but that's been done to death. It's the transitioning of minors, and I think we're all agreed that that's probably the most important issue. So I was wondering if we could find points of agreement that, number one, it is a very serious, important issue. Are we all agreed on that?
Absolutely.
I agree with that. Yep.
Yeah, they asked me for my pronouns, so I didn't want to cause trouble, so I gave it.
Yeah, and so I think no matter what side you're on, we can agree that we should try to avoid mistakes and be very cautious. Are we agreed with that?
Yeah, I think these are softballs. And
Yes.
this is what's really going
I think,
on.
yeah. I think it depends
Okay.
on, as well as your definition of caution and where we're going with that.
Okay. So now, this is a legitimate question. I don't know the answer to this, but what is the process for, let's say, a 14, 15-year-old wants to transition surgically? What does that process look like? How do they decide?
So it's very, very rare to get surgery at that age. So first of all,
I agree, yeah.
especially genital surgery is not done under age 18. So that's completely off the table until they reach an age of consent. Are you specifically only wanting to talk about the surgical transition, or do you want to discuss like the whole process of like if someone comes out and then
I'm totally for you know, what do you call it, the counseling and that sort of thing. I think for most people in the United States, it's surgery and to a lesser degree the hormones.
Well, no, actually, no. Surgery is not the primary thing that's done. So let me talk to you a little bit about the timeline of like if someone is to come out as trans. So
See, we're already miscommunicating. Like, I should have very clearly said, no, I don't care about the counseling stuff. Let's talk about the process for bottom surgery, if there is a process. And his main point is, well, it's very, very rare. But he, I think, is about to talk about stuff I'm not really asking about.
there's kind of a stepwise process, and it's especially for minors is done very carefully. So the first thing that's going to happen is social transition. And
Actually, to be fair to him, you have to do all these little steps before you can go to the big step. So I take that back. So, but be patient. He's going to talk for at least 5 minutes here.
and therapy. So basically, like we're trying very hard to do the minimal amount needed for people to relieve their symptoms, right? So especially in young people who don't necessarily meet the age of consent, I agree that we want to be cautious, but we don't jump straight to surgery. And in fact, a lot of people don't get surgery. A lot of people don't want surgery. And most people do not get surgery until they are at an age of consent, which is over 18. So what's going to happen is a person's going to come out, possibly to their family, to their friends as trans. And if they decide that they want to undergo transition, the first step is social transition. So we're talking things like changing your hair, changing a name that you want to go by, changing your pronouns, like changing the way that you dress, things like that that are all reversible, right? Because even if you change your name, you can change your name back. Like that's not an issue. So let's say we have somebody that starts socially transitioning and they really enjoy how they feel on that. And we get them in to see a therapist, and they're talking about who they are. They're learning about things in their lives, like what they like, what they don't like about themselves. And like they can tease out a lot of other things going on too. So they got somebody to talk to. They got somebody to process all this with in an evidence-based manner. And then it usually takes like the steps to go to a medical transition. Like there's a lot of barriers needed to even begin that stage. So especially for minors, you still need to have pretty convincing documentation that says, yes, your symptoms are bad enough to where you need medical intervention. So the informed consent model does not exist for children. And when we're talking about medical transition for minors, we are talking very high risk children. So this is different than like a lot of people are saying that you can just say, I feel like I want to transition today, and then be whisked off for hormones, puberty blockers, and surgery. That's not what's going to happen. These are kids whose gender dysphoria is so severe that we are talking about kids in front of you that it's like, if they do not get this intervention for medical therapy, we are looking at pretty significant psychological distress and like risk of self-harm and suicidality and things. So we're not talking about low risk kids, because they can wait a lot of the time and they will go through a lot of barriers. Like if someone just says, I feel like I want to transition, they have even more barriers to go through, because they have to clearly document that this is what is going to be the best course of action for them. But most of this comes down to, like, you have a kid sitting in front of you who's maybe ages 14, 15, who has significant risk of self-harm. Like, they've probably been hospitalized more than once. Like, most of the trans kids that I've seen have been hospitalized more than once for psychological conditions and related.
For being trans, or for psychological conditions other than being trans? Like, I wish I could ask these questions, but it just, I couldn't. There was no way I could interrupt him.
To their gender dysphoria, oftentimes it's people who have been bullied incessantly and don't have a safe place to go, to where their suicidality is a direct result of people's actions upon them.
Yeah. Are these actions like from drugs, from the sex trade, from mom and dad not giving enough hugs and love? And how much of this is directly correlated to being trans? I wish I could ask these questions.
For being trans.
Oh, so he said for being trans. How do you prove that? That it's solely about that and not something else?
Like, it's not other things. It's not them having delusions of who they think they are that they aren't. It is they don't have a safe place to go, and they would rather not be alive than have to deal with that. And that's the risk level we're dealing with here. So if you had a kid sitting in front of you that said, like, this is who I am, I'm happy with who I am, these other people are causing me so much distress that I would rather not be alive, and having this intervention would help me exist in this society where I could be alive. That's what we're dealing with.
Yeah, the only things I really have to add to that are, I did a quick Google search for studies on the like average age that gender affirming surgeries are done on in patients in the US. And granted, I did not have the time to like evaluate the study in its entirety, but the one number that one study gave was the average age is 29. And I think that makes sense when you just think about, for one, insurance is not going to cover most gender affirming care, and gender affirming care is incredibly expensive. So on top of the barriers that minors would have to go through to access a lot of these procedures, you have to consider the financial cost. I mean, unless they have parents who are very wealthy and willing to spend it on that, the kid is probably shit out of luck. But on top of that, when we're looking at the procedures that like kids are looking for, like, those are also relatively low risk that most of the young people are looking for. We're talking about top surgery and things like that. getting a mastectomy or breast implants, where the regret rates that we see are extraordinarily low. So I'm failing to see a really valid reason to stop minors from accessing the age-appropriate medical interventions that, as Ben pointed out, their doctors have agreed upon. I mean, for example, like, even as an adult, when I got face surgery, I had to have 2 letters from 2 different therapists saying that they...
Good. Yeah. So far, I'm actually enjoying hearing that 2 letters from 2 different therapists. But Darkin in the live stream chat just said something I didn't know, that his own daughter or child came out as trans, picked a name, seen a therapist, went to an what's an endo, and had to be admitted to an institution for a time. And then Darkin says, good thing she didn't go on hormones or have any surgery because she changed her mind. Turns out she is just bisexual. See, this is most parents' worry. And as they said, this is very rare, bottom surgery especially. But can you imagine doing a bottom surgery and then 10 years later, 5 years later, changing your mind? Oh, terrible.
Proof of me getting the surgery, and that is for gender dysphoria, and that I have a documented history of gender dysphoria. Whereas a cis woman who wanted all of the exact same procedures could go to that exact same doctor and get those exact same procedures without any need for medical documentation proving their case. And even though I paid out of pocket, I still had to prove to the doctor that I was actually trans as an adult. Like, these are hoops that I had to jump through. I had to do lots of work that I didn't love.
I don't understand why Arden didn't just say, I'm getting this just, I guess you just can't say for cosmetic reasons.
Doing in order to pay for the surgery that I got. There are extraordinary barriers in front of children, and like the notion that the majority treatment that kids are getting in the US today is surgery is just detached from reality.
Okay. Yeah, everything you said was very reasonable, especially I understand and realize that it's a very small percentage, but I just want to be clear. Are you both for, in the very rare cases, let's say bottom surgery for minors?
No, bottom surgery for minors does not happen. So take away that argument.
I'm asking if it did happen, would you be for it or against it?
If the evidence suggested like as Ben is saying, this is not the world we live in today, but if the evidence suggested that genital surgery at a certain age was developmentally appropriate and led to the best outcomes for those kids, then yes, I would support evidence.
Okay, listen to this part very carefully.
Evidence-based medical care for children.
Please.
Like I do for every other medical thing that a child might face.
And do we have that evidence?
Currently, we don't have that evidence. So currently, okay. I'm currently not in support of that because we don't currently have the evidence. But like Arden is saying, if the evidence came out and was statistically significant that showed that there was a like certain number needed to treat and all that stuff, the metrics that we look at were in line to say that this is an appropriate guideline, then yeah, I would be. But we're not there. So I think like maybe even presenting that argument is a bit disingenuous because that's I wonder if you're trying to get us to agree with something that isn't currently like the situation and that we don't have the evidence for.
But I mean, this is really easy. I've said this so many times. Yeah. I support evidence-based medical care. Transition care for minors, as it currently stands, the developmentally appropriate stages, is evidence-based. Could the evidence be stronger? Of course. We always want stronger evidence. That's just the nature of science and research. We always want to progress our evidence, progress our diagnostic criteria, progress the treatments that we give people. I support evidence-based medicine. What we're doing for minors right now, or what we were doing before a few states started attacking this care, was evidence-based care. I support that. If it came out that genital surgery for 14-year-olds was the best outcome for them, I would support that because that's evidence-based medical care.
Okay, so what I'm hearing from you both is that there is no evidence currently that bottom surgery works for minors.
Yeah, so
we don't have that phrasing is problematic because It's not about whether the surgery works or not. It is whether this surgery is evidence-based to where we can establish a general guideline. And so that's the issue here. And like how we establish guidelines is a bit of a nuanced topic, but like we need to have basically a cost benefit analysis and say like for certain cases, this is the expected benefit. These are the expected risks. Is it worth the risks to provide this benefit? And is that consistent enough across the board for this population to where we can say this is a general guideline and most people in this circumstance are going to have a similar result? And that's what we're talking about. So it's not really a matter of does it work or would it work? Or not. That's irrelevant. Is can we make this a guideline?
Right. Okay. So what I'm hearing is you both agree that we don't have the evidence to say that the benefits outweigh the costs for bottom surgery for minors.
Yeah.
For a general guideline.
For genital surgery.
For a general
for
guideline.
minors. But that
Well,
is
you know,
not to say that gender affirming hormone care, that getting potentially top surgery for people 16 and up isn't acceptable. That's not to say that all of the other age appropriate medical interventions that are established in the guidelines are not supported, because they're very well supported.
But it sounds like on the very serious issues, we're agreed.
Yeah, so I don't. So what are you calling in for then? I saw you.
What are you calling in for if we're agreed?
In the chat, kind of like pushing
When I told the call screener it was to find points of agreement.
back on some of the things people were saying.
No,
or, like,
I didn't push
asking
back at all. I
questions?
asked questions.
Okay, so I heard you be like, I'm getting banned for asking questions. I trust our mods. Our mods are pretty fucking good. So like, I have a hard time believing you were just asking innocent questions that didn't sound loaded or problematic. Like
Yeah, see, this is the problem. I didn't realize how much. I don't know. I didn't assume that these two even knew of me, but it became very clear very quickly that they assumed the worst of me and that I would trap them. And for the record, if I was going to trap you, I will let you know ahead of time.
the sense that there is more underneath this that you're not getting to that I would rather get to. Well, I appreciate what you're doing, let's establish the points we agree on and make sure we like care about each other or something. It's very street epistemology of you, but let's like actually get to the meat of what's going on here.
She doesn't want me to use street epistemology.
Well, no, I am dead serious with you. My biggest concern is exactly what we're talking about, and it seems we're agreed on it. My second concern is, I guess, with the sports issue. Like you tell me if you agree or not, or where we potentially what we could talk about if you want more drama. But I think that if you were born with the ability to produce sperm, you should be in men's sports, and if
Why?
you weren't, you should be in women's sports.
Why?
And
Why does
what does sperm have to do with sports?
I would like to know what the gametes you were able to produce at birth has to do with your athletic performance. Please make that connection.
I'm just defining what a man is, I guess, and so I would say that men are far, far superior than women in sports.
Okay, so
what does that
I have a
do with
little
your
bit of a
sperm
problem
production?
with your definition of man because.
What does it have to do with my sperm production? Because that's what a man is. That's at least a big part of the definition of a man. So if a man is a Homo sapien that can produce sperm, if that's the if that's the definition of a man, then if I make the claim that men are superior to women in athletics, then you know what I'm talking about.
Okay, forget I said that then.
So here, let me tell you what my position is on sports, and it's informed by what the what the IOC is doing. I think that.
Oh, now it makes sense because Arden is the one that didn't block me, timed me out 2 or 3 times. It wasn't Stephanie. It wasn't. There was another mod there. I forget the name, but it was Arden. Arden does not like me. Matt doesn't like me because he was there. And he said, I will not tolerate debate in the live stream chat, something like that. And I said, is asking questions the same as debating? And he never answered. Or maybe he did and I didn't see it.
I
Sport
actually
needs
know
to be
your
fair.
position on sports because I just listened to it a few minutes ago from last week's show.
Okay, cool. Do you want
Which
to
is
reiterate
true.
it
And
see if
where
you
we
got
did-
So while I was working, or just shortly after my live stream this morning, I quickly looked at last week's episode just to see what sort of things, whenever the last time they had their episode, and they talked about trans sports. So it was fresh in my mind. And Arden takes, I think, the approach that with some sports, at least some sports, the hormones don't cut it, don't get rid of all the advantage. Like if you decrease hormones or increase hormones for trans men, it doesn't make a full dent. In fact, well, I'll talk about that later.
Disagree is
Okay, yeah,
where
tell
we-
me
I
where
think-
we disagree. That's fine.
Yeah, I think where we disagree is like a great metric for sports is track and field because it encompasses, both running and strength and all that. And on average, a male is just extremely superior to a female. Can you find
Do you
males
know what
that?
an average
I
is?
hate
Do you
this
know what an
phrasing.
average is, Doug? Can you tell me?
Yes.
What is an average?
An average is the sum of all the metrics divided by the total number.
Yeah.
So
A median is the
are
middle.
we having, when we have people, so when we compare an average, is that representative of the entire population versus, like if I were to pick
Yes.
people out and have
If it's
them a man versus a woman in sports, are they going to be representative of that average? Is that
So he's taking, here's your definition of average. If we take certain individuals, could they actually be the exception to the average? That's basically what he's asking. And the answer is, of course.
that average going to be played out in sports in general?
Depends what you're talking about, but on average, if you pull an individual
Right, so
out
you're already
of
adding
a
a
random
depends
sample,
there, so it's not consistently the case. And
See, here's a clear area of disagreement. Because it's coming up soon. To say that men are not superior to women in speed, strength, size, on average, to me is delusional. And to just always point to the exceptions. Well, I got an aunt who's like a shot putter from Bulgaria, and she can beat up all. That's beside the point. The point is when you're comparing apples to apples, taking averages, men are far, far superior than women. And maybe I shouldn't have said it that way because it's a little triggering, but it's the truth.
And so, like, if I were to give somebody, which, like, I reject the whole concept that men by default are, on average, are better than women in sports, because sports it's a very nebulous and broad topic, because, like, take there's
No, I
certain
didn't say
sports
sports.
where
I said
women have a
athletics.
more of a
And I'm wrong there. I did say sports. I rewinded it and listened. But in my head, because I'm talking about track and field with speed and strength, the field events, I'm thinking athletics. But I was wrong. I did say sports. I should have said athletics. But I'll stand by that men are superior to women on average in athletics, in strength, speed. But there's definitely some sports where strength and speed is not an issue.
an advantage. Well, because there are certain sports where flexibility and agility are more important than strength.
But then should they really be called a sport if speed and strength have nothing to do with it? Like, is poker a sport? No.
Than muscle mass. There are sports where muscle mass ends up being a hindrance. But
I agree.
like, let's say, for example, like if we take someone who was assigned female at birth, we take
Like, I wish I could butt in here, but I would say, well, to be technically correct, Homo sapiens, we humans, we're not assigned male or female at birth. It's way before that. There's ultrasounds, right? As soon as you see the little weenie thing there hanging, they say, oh, you're having a boy, right? Isn't that how it usually works, parents?
take somebody who even was completely all of their biology aligned with being female, and we gave them like a crap ton of steroids like during puberty, do you think they would by default be inferior athletically to somebody assigned male
By default,
if they,
yes.
they went through a testosterone based puberty? Why?
Yep.
So did you hear the question? So basically, if you go through this hormone treatment, pumped full of testosterone, for example, and you're female, would men still have an advantage over women? And I answered yes here.
Because there's more than just
Why?
hormones that are, because it's more than
Like
just
what?
hormones.
Give me
I'm not sure if
examples.
there's a
Give me
delay.
examples. What
Yeah,
causes
specific,
what
please.
causes
Lung
what
capacity,
causes the physical
muscle
superiority?
mass.
What was that? Muscle mass? What
Lung
causes muscle?
I should have said muscle frame, or like just the metrics of being taller, longer, and lung capacity. But I should have had this ready on the fly. Let me see if I can bring this up. But there's science to back up what I'm saying. And I think they know this. So even if I would have brought it up at the time, which would have wasted so much time, they say, oh yeah, okay, I'm familiar with this. Trans women elite athletes, their extra percentage relative to female physiology. Let's see. Yeah, they go through some stats on times. And then where's the conclusion? Testosterone derives much of the enhanced athletic performance of males through utero, early life. And yeah, early life, I'm thinking that's even before puberty and adult exposure. Many differences are not reversible. Hemoglobin, blah, blah, blah. Let's see, reported studies show it's difficult to continuously suppress testosterone in transgender women. An elite trans woman athlete retains no residual advantage from former testosterone exposure, where the inherent advantage depending on the sport could be 10 to 30%. Current scientific evidence cannot provide such assurances, and thus, under abiding rulings, the inclusion of trans women needs to be reconsidered for fairness to female-born athletes. The inclusion of trans women in the elite female division needs to be reconsidered for fairness of female-born athletes. So it's basically saying that trans women, men, should not compete in women's sports because that it's more than just testosterone at play here. Anyhow, I'll post this later in the description. I don't want to spend too much time on this because it bores people. Reading papers.
Muscle mass.
No,
Lung capacity. What
the first
causes
thing
lung?
yeah.
What causes your lung size to be what it is?
What?
How would you answer that question, people in the live stream chat? What causes your lung capacity to be what it is? Now, you can say hormones, but even at a more fundamental level, I think the better answer is your genetics, right? Because your genetics will determine your hormone levels, how big you're going to grow. And this is how I answered.
Size to be what it is. Your
Yeah,
genetics.
how do you grow your lungs? What are things that grow your lungs throughout your life? Do young boys and young girls have different lung capacities because of their sex?
Yes.
Yeah, and I shouldn't have said that, even though I believe it's true, because I can't defend it. Well, I can defend it, but not using metrics he would accept. So I said yes, that even before puberty, the lung capacity of a boy is bigger than a girl. Even though their size, like height, weight, might be the same. But I think what I said there is true. And if I had hours, I could probably find, confirming information to support that. But off the top of my head, I said yes because I know that the stats for longer distance running for boys and girls are different. Boys are faster, which is a good indication they have larger lung capacity. Also, I think that the shoulder width, I'm not talking about height, but shoulder width of boys compared to girls is wider. Now, I could be wrong about that. But because I wasn't sure of that part, you'll see later, I conceded it.
Do they?
Do you have,
a
evidence
citation for that?
I haven't. I'm genuinely
No,
asking
not on
because
me.
Okay. Have you
Well,
encountered
hey,
one before?
Dr. Ben, let's find points of agreement, okay?
Okay,
Do
Doug,
you
No,
agree?
I don't care. I don't give a shit about your points of agreement.
Yes.
I am like, you're trying to avoid.
Okay, I want to stop it here. I don't give a shit about points of agreement. Now, he thinks I'm being evasive here, but I totally back down from this, as you'll see, because I don't want to have to provide the evidence. I didn't want to have to bring up the running times, the distance times for 8-year-olds and boys and girls, but I'll do it now, actually. Why not? Let's see here. Unfortunately, they didn't have long distance cross country in here. But this kind of freaks a lot of people out because they always think it's puberty, which causes the differences between males and females. But it even happens before puberty. So this is, I think, world records, USATF in the United States, National Junior Olympic Track and Field Championship records. And they go all the way down to 8 and under. So let's just assume 8 years old. 100 meter, 13.69. Female, 14.11. But those are sprints. And it's quite far apart still, even before puberty. And the longest race they have here is the 1500. So look at the 1500 girls' time. 5 minutes, 32 seconds. For boys, it's 5 minutes, 8 seconds. That's not insignificant. That is not insignificant. That's a pretty big time difference for a 1500 meter race. Now, I'm inferring from this data that even pre-puberty, males have larger lung capacity than females. Now, I'm still admitting I can be wrong, but you have to be reasonable and admit to me, I think, that it's a pretty good explanation for the data. Right? Isn't that reasonable? But I think the reason why people push back on this is that they have to admit to themselves that there's an inherent advantage of males over females even before puberty. And so that puberty blockers, puberty hormone additions is not the whole story here. You can even take something like strength, shot put. The record for an 8-year-old is 8.39 meters. Female shot put 7.34, much lower. So I think what I said there about the lung capacity pre-puberty boys being greater is, even though I couldn't prove it at the time, is at least very reasonable to assume based on this type of data.
The fact that you're saying some things that are incorrect. So I want you to answer my questions because you've made some claims that need to be backed up. So yeah, okay. So you made the claim. So let me repeat your argument back to you. So you said that if we had someone assigned female that went through a testosterone puberty, like even artificially went through a testosterone puberty, that they would be inherently inferior to a cis man who went through a testosterone puberty because of a specific example being lung capacity. And so if sex is the determining factor, not hormones, but other biological sex factors
Genetics.
Makes that different, then we would expect in childhood, right, to see boys having different lung capacity than girls, correct?
No, there was a bit of miscommunication there.
What's the difference then? Tell me the difference.
Yeah, I wonder what. See, the thing is, when I call in, I can't show what I just showed you about the times. I start talking about it, but then in my mind, I'm realizing this is futile.
If you look at, let's say, 100-meter running times of an 8-year-old,
That's not
male
answering my
versus
question. Answer my question about lung capacity.
Yeah, see, this is what I was getting at. Answer my question about lung capacity. I am trying to by showing you the data shows that boys beat girls in running races, which is very reasonable to assume that part of the issue, if it's pre-puberty, has to do with lung capacity, that they can bring in oxygen and expel carbon dioxide more efficiently than a female, therefore they can run faster times. Isn't that reasonable?
So why is the lung capacity different in boys versus girls? What causes differences in that?
My answer I gave you
Because there's
earlier
an
was
answer here.
genetics.
There's an answer here, and I think you're avoiding the answer here. Because there's something in puberty that happens generally for males versus females that causes differences in size of certain organs. And I think
Okay,
you know
Dr.
what
Ben,
that
you're
is.
right.
And I think you're avoiding it. Right.
No, Dr.
What is
Ben,
that
you're
factor?
right.
Tell
You're
me.
right.
Tell me what
Hormones.
the factor is.
I'll give you what you want. Hormones.
Yes. Good job.
Okay.
Now the question is, don't humans have hormones before puberty too? Right? But I was being honest. I agreed with him. He's right. One of the big things that separates men and women is hormones at puberty. But the data of running times of 8-year-olds suggests there's something else going on. And we talk about that here.
Can I
But
ask-
can we not
can
do
I
the
ask you a question
patronizing
now?
give you what you want thing? Can we just acknowledge that you made a statement that
Well-
was incorrect and Ben pointed out why it was incorrect and now you're admitting that you were incorrect?
I was wrong. I'm sorry.
Okay,
Thank you.
Can I ask a question now?
go for it.
Question is, do I really believe I was wrong? I was wrong to bring it up because I couldn't give them what they wanted, so it was a total waste of time. But am I wrong that the lung capacity of boys exceeds girls? That I cannot say I'm wrong and they're right, because I honestly don't know, but I think the evidence points to that I was right in that claim. But you just can't search online, what's the lung capacity of boys versus girls? Can you? Do we have those measurements online? David Friskin says, no, not lung capacity. I was the fastest 100 runner and won long jump. Then General Fitness took over and I won those. I don't know what you're trying to say.
Are you aware that 8-year-olds pre-puberty, males, boys, outperform girls on certain sports like track and field?
So
Well, can I-
so provide the statistic, but also explain.
Okay, and that's why I brought it up just now. 5 minutes ago, I provided those stats, and you can look it up for yourself. American records, ages 8 and under, for various running meets, running distances, and shot put. And boys significantly are faster and stronger than girls pre-puberty. That's what the data, these records show. And I do think this is a tough pill for people like this to swallow.
The factors that contribute to that
I
statement.
don't know.
If I could jump in here.
I don't know.
Yeah, go for it, Artie.
But I do
I-
know the data.
if I could jump
I
in
do know
here.
the times.
It may be the case, Doug, that young boys do outperform girls on certain measures a certain percentage of the time. I wouldn't object to that, just like I don't object to when we do assessments and we find out there are any differences between groups, but there are a number of factors that get involved, and you can't just assume because of correlation there's a causation there. You can't just assume just because someone's male that is what's causing them to outperform. There's a number of factors going on there, but I agree that the stats do seem to indicate that on a lot of sports, a lot of athletic measures, people who are assigned male do perform better on average than people who are assigned female. But that doesn't say anything about why trans women shouldn't compete in women's sports. You have actually not made the case for that at all, which is what
I'm getting at with my question, like 8-year-olds, 7-year-olds, 9-year-olds. If it's true that, let's say, they run the 100-meter faster, throw the shot put further, pre-puberty.
Well, my
How
thought,
do we
so here
explain that?
there's some factors in here that you're not considering though either, because think about society and how society raises boys to be athletic and raises girls not to be, and learning things like.
But when my son heard this, we're watching this in the den. And when my son heard, I looked over me. He's just like, he's shaking his head. Boys were raised to run faster and raised to throw the shot put further.
Memory, having earlier athletic activity, having more consistent athletic activity, certain things like also are confounding variables here that you can't just say this is purely a sex-based difference. And if you are claiming that it is a sex-based difference, you need to provide evidence that that is the contributing factor, and you have to control for the other variables.
Yeah, and
so
we can say if it's true, yada yada yada.
So the question would become, okay, if we satisfied his criteria, like for example, if it were a fact that as boys grow up and every step of development, their lung capacity is just, scotch bigger, larger, not too much, but a little bit, and that we do a statistical analysis of everybody in the whole world, so we account for the social aspects. We even find tribes in Africa where the girls are big into sports, big into running, and we factor all those things in, and if the data showed that boys before puberty excel over girls in athletics, speed, and strength, would they admit that sports that involve speed and strength should be divided by biological sex? I wish I would have had the time to ask questions like that, but you can't in a situation like this.
I mean, if it's true that trans women were gifted the charm of weightlifting from Thor, then they probably are going to destroy in weightlifting competitions. But we actually have to make the case that that's true. Like, again, even if we make the case, for one, I know the studies that have evaluated transgender performance, specifically trans women before and after hormones, showed that trans women before hormones aren't even the same as cis men in athletic performance. So there's already a difference in those populations and a flaw in assuming that they're the same. But this whole conversation started from you saying you don't think trans women should be in women's sports. And
right.
I would like to understand why, and I don't really feel like you've made the case, because not all trans women are going to outperform women in women's sports just because we're assigned male at birth. If I don't understand what the...
But that's irrelevant to my point. So, and this is, I wish there was some way I could communicate this. Sometimes coming in 8th versus coming in 7th in a sport matters to the woman, because that might help you get onto the Olympic team or not. So let's say we have this male who transitions to female using testosterone. Hormone blockers, and gets 7th place. Because so many times it's all about winning. Oh, we don't see transgender women winning that often. But I'm talking about getting 7th. But the top 7 get to go to the Olympics. What about, and I'm going to appeal to the feelings, what about the feelings of the biological woman who got 8th? If it's true that there's an inherent biological advantage through genetics and not just hormones, I would make the argument that that's not fair. And if they agree with that, then trans women shouldn't be in trans women's sports or in women's sports. But I think both of them are coming from the perspective where they even doubt that men are superior to women in athletics, in strength and speed. And when they're coming from that position where they doubt that it's not even close. The distribution curves are far apart, and there's overlap near the bottom. Then I don't know what to do at that point.
Objection is to a system that would fairly evaluate individual athletic performance and promote guidelines like the IOC, where
Well,
wait. I don't understand what your objection is to things like the IOC's guidelines that use evidence that, testosterone in these certain levels in the blood, volumes in the blood, is what is contributing to athletic performance. And when that's reduced, we see a statistically significant difference in performance in certain domains of sport. And therefore, we can evaluate individual athletes and say, does this athlete have a competitive advantage? No. Then discriminating against them is nothing but discrimination on the basis of them being transgender. And it has nothing to do.
Yes. And I wish I could speak, because you let me speak every time. Well, not every time, but when I try it, it's like, wait. Yes, it's discrimination against trans women. I am not against discrimination against trans women in sports. That's the whole point. I am pro-discrimination against trans women in sports. So just by saying that she's trying to make it sound like that discrimination against trans people is bad. I say, no, it's not bad. It's good. And this is where they have a mind warp. It's like, how can that be good? Because you're protecting biological women. Remember the 7th, 8th place example I gave?
With fairness in sport or athletic performance, if that's the case. Whereas if you actually just follow those guidelines, you can fairly evaluate athleticism and let anyone compete.
Yeah, okay, and let me steel man Arden here. Arden's saying that in some sports, this might be applicable, in other sports not. But what I'm saying is, if there's something more other than the hormones at puberty, which I think there's good evidence for, at least we're seeing results-driven evidence with track and field at age 8, then one can say, I'm trying to figure out what's the best way to phrase this. To keep it simple and to keep it safe and fair, just make a broad ban, no. Just say no. No trans women in women's sports. Just a blanket no. Now, there's definitely in some sports, the hormone thing is going to make more of an impact. But overall, a top 20 percentile woman versus a top 20 percentile man, there's no comparison. The top 20 percentile man is going to dominate the top 20 percentile woman. So you can be a pretty bad athlete as a man and still excel, or at least come in the top 10% in women's sports. And it's because of that reason I say discrimination against trans people in women's sports is good. But we get into this briefly.
Be fair. What is the objection to a system that fairly evaluates individual athletes and doesn't discriminate against entire groups without justification?
Because the entire group has an unfair advantage on average. The entire group. Just being born with a penis gives you an advantage on average. That's why you do a broad ban no. That's why you do a broad ban discrimination against trans people.
It's the same as the objection you gave 1 week ago. that there is evidence that even after the hormones are taken away or added,
Okay,
that there's
if
still
you're
seems that
if you're
there's-
bringing up my own point, you don't understand my point. There is evidence that in some domains of sport, some trans women who've gone through male puberty might maintain an advantage. Might. But not all of them who go through male puberty do. And not all trans women go through male puberty. So banning the entire group, trans women, because of a small subset within that group, I don't know if you know set theory, but we're going to do a little lesson. Imagine a big circle, trans women, a smaller circle, trans women who have a competitive advantage in, let's say, running, for this example. Banning the entire circle because of the little circle is not discrimination because you want fairness in sport. It's discrimination on the basis of their identity over which they have no control. And that is, in my opinion, exclusionary, wrong. It separates people from something that's extremely important.
May I ask why you think it's wrong to discriminate that way?
There's actually specific citations from those groups that I...
Yeah, and so the reason why I asked that question, why do you think it's wrong to discriminate against trans people? Because it will get to why Arden is so passionate against it, whereas I'm saying, let's be safe rather than sorry and just ban all of them. Now, you can say there's exceptions like the sport of chess. But even then, you realize that there's women chess clubs or leagues and men's chess leagues? I mean, it gets kind of scary if you think about it. Even sports, in quotes, oh, chess is not a sport, but actually it is. Your heart rate gets pretty high when you play chess competitively. Even sports where you think there shouldn't be an advantage that men have, they may still have that advantage. So here's my argument of banning all trans women, discriminating against them on purpose, is because we know there's on average an inherent advantage that men have, I think, pre-puberty and after puberty, and puberty, trying to change puberty or block it is not going to solve that problem. So just ban all of it. And then I couldn't say this to them, but it is okay to let trans people cry. But this is why I asked about why is it bad to discriminate against? Because, and I didn't get the chance to do this, but I would have said, you do realize there's biological women crying too about this issue. Why do you care about the trans person's mental health state and not the biological woman's? Like, it can be devastating for a woman to work hard and then just get crushed by a man who's now a trans woman.
I listed at the top of the show that talks about how inclusion to sport is statistically correlated with improving in people's well-being, feeling connected to their community, reduction in all of the symptoms that trans people suffer with in our society, like suicidal ideation and depression. So being a part of sports is important.
And to me, this is a part of emotional manipulation that's just so unattractive to me. Do what I want, or I'm going to be sad and I might hurt myself, or I might commit suicide. Give me what I want, or else.
For their identity and for their sense of community and belonging. And you want to take it from them because they're trans, not because there's a fair advantage. You say there's a fair advantage, it's because it's a fair advantage, but you haven't actually demonstrated that that is why you want to ban all trans women. So please try again, make the case for why you want to ban all trans women, because a small subset may have an advantage in specific situations.
Well, we're agreed in principle, at least partially. Where we disagree is
this is why I hate
See, I was about to give her an answer and she wouldn't let me. And I purposely was talking slow and calm on purpose because I wanted to model the behavior I desired. But I was going to go to the pragmatic explanation. The reason why you should make a clear broadband ban of trans women in sports is because it's so simple. It is so Easy. Born with a penis, you go in this box. Not born with a penis, you go in that box. Intersex, you go with the men. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. This is why I asked why discrimination against trans is so bad, because Arden would say, this is horrible. Why are you using these simple metrics to judge how sports should be conducted when there's people's mental health at stake? And then I would have talked about the mental health of biological women. Or just women, in other words.
Epistemology
Pretending-
people. Look,
Yeah.
listen, Doug, I want to have a productive conversation with you. I really do. And so far, I think you've been a mostly honest interlocutor on
I've
answering the
barely
questions.
talked.
Yes, because you're saying incorrect things, and I'm not just going to let you walk around with that. So
You guys are talking like for minutes and minutes, and I can barely say anything.
It's our show.
if you stop saying incorrect things,
I
I
know
would
it's
let
your
you
show.
talk.
You can do what you
I
want.
would, if
but
you
it
stop
doesn't
saying
look good
incorrect
for you
things,
guys
if you stop saying
I
incorrect
can't even
things,
talk.
if you stop saying incorrect things and trying to talk over me,
What do you think Arden would say is an incorrect thing I said about the lung capacity? That's the only thing I can think of. But there's a good chance I'm not incorrect about that. I conceded it, but I think I probably still right. Can someone fact check that? Is there any, I don't even know what to search. Lung capacity of boys versus girls at age 8, I don't know. Like, have they actually done measurements on that? Is it true that boys have wider shoulders than girls, and girls even before puberty? Or is it the same? I don't know.
let you talk.
But the evidence seems to suggest, based on 1,500-meter running times, like, what explains that? What explains an 8-year-old boy, 8-year-old boys being faster than 8-year-old girls? What explains that? We know boys are not bigger than girls at that age. Average height, average weight, I think is pretty much the same. What explains it? I think it's reasonable to say lung capacity.
But instead,
I'm actually
you say
trying
things.
to build a bridge
Instead-
here, and you guys are just so
Doug,
angry.
listen.
Whoa, hang on. Brojo says, Pinecreek politics, you're not wrong. I cited it. The volume of adult female lungs is typically 10 to 12% smaller than that of males who have the same height and age. No, but hang on, Brojo. Is this before puberty? Or just in general? Because they would say, oh yeah, that might be true after puberty, but we're talking before puberty. Give me a wrench and I'll give you links. Okay. I will. I just see there's a heart here. I can't get at it. Someone type something so I can get at it.
I'm saying.
Wait,
Doug,
please
you
let me
keep
finish.
saying that you're okay.
I'm sorry. I know I talk a lot and I want to let you talk, Ben. I'm not trying to talk over you, but please. Doug, I appreciate you're trying to do this like street epistemology, like let's find where we connect and find like levels of disagreement and where we can
Right.
progress forward, okay? But then you're advocating for a position that would ban all trans women, which statistically impacts their well-being. This is a known thing.
And what about the well-being of women, biological women? What about their well-being? You don't think they get sad sometimes about these issues?
Because some of
Okay,
them...
can we talk about that?
Because, let me finish my point, please. Because some of them might have a statistic advantage. That doesn't make sense. You need to actually make the case for why all trans women should be banned, because you have failed to do so thus far.
Because in most sports that involve athletics, strength, and speed, there's an inherent advantage of men over women that even goes beyond hormones. That's my claim. And I provided one paper here to support that. Now, but I'll make a very pragmatic type argument. I'd rather be safe than sorry on this issue. So I am for a broad ban against trans women. I am for discriminating against trans women. They can go to their therapist and get help. They can go to their family and get help. Do we have one example of a trans athlete committing suicide because they couldn't compete? Show me the data on that. Show me the data that's because they were not allowed to compete as a trans woman that they killed themselves. Do we have one example?
Okay, I'll make a very simple argument.
I want to jump in with my point. The reason why we keep stopping you is because you've been smuggling in points under this veil of just asking questions and just having a conversation and trying to agree so that you look like the good guy and we look like we're bad for interrupting you and all this stuff when you're smuggling in points. Like, for example, like when we were talking about like genital surgery for minors and we said like we're going for guidelines and you had left out.
Oh, thank you, Brojo. Thank you, Brojo. I was right. Pre-puberty. In the last 4 weeks of gestation, the female fetus... Hang on. Let me make it bigger. It's cut off. I think I'm right, but let me read this here. What is this? National Library of Medicine. From 26 to 36 weeks of gestation, female fetuses show a more mature phospholipid profile that reflects production of surfactant after birth. Female, higher ratio of large to small airways. They tend to have higher flow and specific airway conductance than males. Oh, that's females over males. This has been attributed to the role of surfactant. Men are characterized by larger nasal cavities, longer, narrower, and higher nasal floors than females of the same body size. Okay, this is not lungs, but we're getting in that ballpark. Such sexual dimorphism in human skull influences the morphology of the upper airways. Male average skeletal cranial airways are larger and with taller piriform apertures. Okay, so I still could be wrong, but I'm on the right track here. But hang on, let me do a search on lungs. Oh, here we go. There are also sex-related differences in the pharynx in terms of size and resistance. The cross-sectional area is higher in men than in women. The cross-sectional area is higher in men than women. Although age and percentage of ideal body weight are contributors, the strongest independent factor impacting area is sex. Not hormones, but sex. Differences also emerge dynamically with lung volume variations. Males also demonstrate stronger volume dependence than females. The percentage change in area between total lung capacity is significantly higher in males than females. Don't you hate it? Don't you hate it when Pinecreek is right? I owe it all to you, Brojo. So I apologize for nothing. Oh well.
The fact that it was a guideline and you tried to frame it as this absolute thing and try to trap us in a particular statement. Like, we see what you're doing with your arguments.
Right, and then you're doing these
so
condescending, like, fine, you're right, I'm wrong, you're so right.
We're not going to let you play that game. You actually have to prove your arguments and not play these games with us.
So go ahead, make your case. Last chance, and then we're going to move on from this call.
Yeah, I don't think it's actually worth dialoguing.
Cool, bye. All right, Doug's gone. Here's the thing. We've had many productive conversations with people who disagree with us on this show. But Doug consistently says, I think all trans women have an advantage over women in sports. And we say, okay, what's your evidence for that? Well,
Hang on, did I say that?
who disagree with us on this show. But Doug consistently says, I think all trans women have an advantage over women in sports. And we
No, I did not say that. I said on average, men are stronger and faster than women. Now, you can find examples where one individual man who transitions to female, or not female, woman, may not have an advantage. You can always find these exceptions.
say,
But I'm saying because we know these distributions are so far apart that it's better to be safe and fair and just ban all of them. And this is where I think people go crazy and nuts on me. It's because that's just, you're being so cruel. And then I would reply, you're being cruel and misogynistic against biological women. But I had to walk on eggshells. I can't speak like that. Or I don't even think I'd be allowed to speak that way. Can you imagine if I called Arden and Ben misogynists? Because they are not for a complete ban, discrimination against trans people in sports? Can you imagine that? How well that would go? Wouldn't go well.
okay, what's your evidence for that? Well, my evidence for that is that cis men are always better than women at sports. And you say, okay, what's your evidence for that? And he goes, well, most of the time they are. Okay, so they're not always better. And therefore, even though trans women don't represent cis women, from your worldview, trans women also aren't always better. But you want to ban them all the time. Yes.
Yes, do not make exceptions just for the feels. And if you do make exceptions for the feels, to me, that's emotional manipulation. You have to make exceptions for so-and-so because if you don't, they're going to commit suicide. I do not think you can make social policy based on threats of suicide or hurting themselves. You cannot run a society that way. Do what I want or I will cut myself. Do what I want or I'm going to commit suicide. You cannot run a society that way. You have to do what's best for the whole. And what's best for the whole, if you care about women in sports, is not allow transgender women into sports. Full stop.
Okay, make the case for that because that doesn't actually make any fucking sense. And then when we correctly challenge you on your incorrect points, you cry and you go, you guys aren't letting me talk. You aren't letting me be incorrect repeatedly on your show. Yes, because it's our fucking show, because I actually care about the truth of what's affecting trans people. If you don't care about the truth, I don't give a fuck what you have to say, Doug. I don't care about looking like a bad guy to you. I don't care about you thinking I'm mean and not productive at dialogue. I'm not here to hold your fucking hand out of bigotry. I'm here to speak the truth about what trans people are and what is okay or not okay to do to us in the society. And I actually want the facts, which you have failed repeatedly to bring. So you can go cry to your own little audience, which is just full of the same shitty anti-trans atheists. I've heard lots about it, even when I was being asked to be on your channel by your producer or something like a year ago. So never gonna fucking happen, you annoying little troglodyte.
I would not be surprised if like part of this gets clipped out and only
Good.
the parts that make him look better.
Do it.
I would
Let
not
him
be
clip
surprised if he
it.
sees
Let him
that.
go be a little whiny ass bitch to his fucking audience. I don't give a fuck what he does. Okay.
So I looked over at my daughter after I played this for her. I said, what do you think? And she said, this does not make them look good. I mean, this is why I advocate to be a little more dead inside. Because of this sort of thing. When you care so deeply about a certain person or people group, It's really hard to look at the evidence objectively at that point.
Productive conversations with people who disagree with us on this show. But Doug consistently says, I think all trans women have an advantage over women in sports. And we say, okay, what's your evidence for that? Well, my evidence for that is that cis men are always better than women at sports. And you say, okay, what's your evidence for that? And he goes, well, most of the time they are. Okay, so they're not always better. And therefore, even though trans women don't represent cis women, from your worldview, trans women also aren't always better. But you want to ban them all the time. Yes. Okay, make the case for that, because that doesn't actually make any fucking sense. And then when we correctly challenge you on your incorrect points, you cry and you go, you guys aren't letting me talk. You aren't letting me be incorrect repeatedly on your show. Yes, because it's our fucking show, because I actually care about the truth of what's affecting trans people. If you don't care about the truth, I don't give a fuck what you have to say, Doug. I don't care about looking like a bad guy to you. I don't care about you thinking I'm mean and not productive at dialogue. I'm not here to hold your fucking hand out of bigotry. I'm here to speak the truth about what trans people are and what is okay or not okay to do to us in the society. And I actually want the facts, which you have failed repeatedly to bring.
Yeah, I agree. I failed to bring it at that moment in time, and I hope they see it or someone tells them about it. But I brought it here now. Thank you to Brojo, is it? I was right that even pre-puberty, lung capacity, the intake, the nasal cavity of boys is larger than girls. That the surface area, I can post the link later. It's larger for boys than girls. I showed the actual practical evidence of boys at 8 years old excelling over girls in the 100, 200, 400, 800, 1500 shot put. Boys and men are far, far, far superior to girls and women on average. Fact. 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 When it comes to speed, strength, which, in my opinion, if a sport doesn't involve speed or strength or some type of agility, like your motor skills, it's not a real sport. So, what could I have done differently? I guess I could have provided, be more prepared for showing stuff like this. 8 and under boys, stuff like this. 8 and under girls. Show stuff like this. Lung capacity of boys versus girls, even before puberty. Show stuff like this. Papers that show, hang on. Show that there still retains advantage even with testosterone or hormone blocking. No, hormone blocking is still an advantage. But would it really have made a difference? Because the real issue is the mental health and feelings of transgender people. So, would you call back again with the studies? They hate me. I'm not sad about that, but I'm just stating a fact. I think they hate me. I could tell just my presence in the live stream chat, even before I went on, the animosity was through the roof. And you can see in that last 2 minutes or whatever, the passion in Arden, that there's so much at stake for Arden. These are real lives at risk. Yeah, I think the first half went well, Brian. But you know what's ironic about the first half that went well when we were talking about surgery for minors, which almost never happens, but this is the concern a lot of people in the United States have. They don't want it to happen. They're happy that it's very rare, but it would be even happier if it never, for a lot of Americans, happens if it never occurs. And the fact that Ben and even Arden and I agreed that the evidence is not there to support that the benefits do not outweigh the costs for bottom surgery for transitioning minors, that there's no evidence that it benefits them. The fact that all three of us agreed on that point for guidelines. The fact that all three of us agreed on that point, I think, made them mad at me. Here we got this bigoted, atheist, transphobe named Pinecreek, and I agree with him, and he agrees with me. Oh, the horror. How is it possible that I agree with this bigoted transphobe? See, just the fact that I went on that show seeking out points of agreement. My guess is, and this is a guess, my guess is they don't like that. I think the reason why Arden got so emotional at the end and started cussing and swearing, making all Christians blush who watch, is because she'd rather fight. She'd rather have me swear at her than actually find points of agreement. Because Pinecreek is a transphobe, and I just can't bring myself to find points of agreement with a transphobe. This is my guess. Does anybody want to hop on? Women have fought so hard for Title IX and other equality in sports. This is a potential to erase it all. Yeah, I agree, Mel. That's why I say it should be just a practical. There's a practical reason that I couldn't actually get out and articulate with them, but this is the practical reason. Like, why is there women's sport in the first place? Because women and men are different biologically from probably 3 months in the womb to death. Puberty or not, on average, we're different. My son is a bit of an athlete, but not my daughter. But I was an athlete. My wife was an athlete. My wife used to hold records in triple jump. I used to hold records in the 400 meter. I think in grade 9, I ran 53 seconds, and I think that was a record for a while. No, we did not talk about trans men in men's sports because that's evidence right there that we don't talk about it very often. It's because trans men don't do that well. Can anybody here name a trans man who's even gotten in the top 10 in any sport that involves running, speed, or strength? I don't know of any. Here's the channel that's critiquing you now. Oh, thanks, Brojo. You're becoming useful. Oh, that's Stephanie. I know Stephanie. But they're not
Most
talking.
people piss, and yet they still don't want us to take a piss where they do. I don't.
Maybe I should go on there. Maybe one of you guys should go on there and show these studies. Let's see. How do I share these studies? Well, Brojo already shared one of them. But the studies on, not the studies, but the data on American records of 8-year-old boys versus girls is here. And I tell you, this is important and it's powerful because it's not like a scientific paper that you have to muddle through. It's, you just look at the times and you got to, this is, how did the Christians say? This is data that's begging for explanation. Why is it consistently across the board, 8-year-olds boys outperform 8-year-old girls? Pre-puberty. This is a huge point. Is that Brenda? No, that's not Brenda. That's Stephanie. Yeah, Brenda's trans woman. Right? Yeah. Of course, yeah. And I think she agrees with me on the sports issue. I think we talked about that long a time ago, but maybe we didn't. We just talked about, if you came late, we talked about bottom surgery and sports, but I would have also loved to talk to even about hormones. Because to me, it's not as serious as bottom surgery, but still, it's still pretty serious. Oh, another paper here. This is the paper that Brojo, I think, gave that showed that my claim about lung capacity pre-puberty was correct. I think I haven't had time to read it all. So that's there. And then the paper on that even if you block hormones at puberty for boys turning into men and then they're trans women, that there's still a advantage of trans women over women. That paper is, here's the title of that paper. I can't copy and paste that one. To me, this is a no-brainer. And the thing is, even if I'm wrong about everything, let me see if I can find this here. If I'm wrong about everything, so is about 65 to 70% of the American public. So this becomes a practical issue for people in the transgender movement, activists, to communicate better. And do you think what happened on that show was an example of great communication? I guess it started off okay. But I was going to show something here. Yeah. These are recent polls, I think 2023. Majority of Americans support gender affirming counseling, like talking, but opposed to medication. From age 10 to 14, most support talking, but puberty blocking medication, 68% of the American public are against it. This is end of 2022 Washington Post poll. And for 15 to 17%, 58% against. So as you get older, the public is more open to hormone treatments. Now, for a national poll, this is not insignificant. People say, oh, it's only 58%. That's huge. Sports should not be allowed. Should trans women and girls should or should not be able to compete with other women and girls? 62% youth, 66% against for high school, 65% against college, 65% against professional. So there's a marketing problem here if you're a transgender activist. And by the way, it's shifting, but not in the direction the trans activist wants with these two issues. Let's see if I can find it. I think, oh yeah, here we go. American views of moral acceptability of changing one's gender. In May 2021, morally wrong 51, it's jumped. Like the American public is shifted in 2 years by 4 percentage points that it's morally wrong to change one's gender. So my advice is, whatever the trans activists are doing, it's not working. You cannot just call people transphobes and expect to persuade people to your side. You can't just swear at them and expect to persuade them to your side. You're failing. So maybe Arden does need to learn street epistemology. I don't know why she brought it up so often. But when I guess when she thinks of me, she thinks of street epistemology. So this is why I say that I probably shouldn't even talk about this issue anymore. Because, like, I talk about Christianity because 65% of the United States claim to be Christians. So the majority are still Christians. A lot of them I think, are dangerous. Not all. Teaching dangerous things to kids and so forth. So I'm still talking about it, right? Raising doubt in people. But on this issue, on sports and changing one's gender, transitioning, when it comes to hormones and surgery, most people in the United States think like me, a transphobe apparently. So activists, you need to change your strategy. You can't use guilt because that's what you have been trying. It doesn't work. You've been trying emotional manipulation. Doesn't work. I think it's very telling how resistant they are to the street epistemology approach. I got so many tabs up here. Look at all that. They actually criticize you for being polite and calm. Yeah. Well, I made that observation earlier that I think my guess was that they wanted me to be mean. They wanted me to yell and scream and interrupt them and I don't know what all. But this is a common thing. Like, it even happens in marriage. There's probably a lot of husbands in here right now. But tell me the truth. If you're a husband listening and you get in an argument with your wife and you're calm, it makes your wife even more mad. Right? And this just, I shouldn't pick on husbands and wives. This happens, like, people get mad at you if you don't get mad. Why aren't you feeling what I'm feeling? Hit me, you know, you see that and go ahead, take a swing. Why are you being nice? She brought up SE because you were getting her mad. I just wish I didn't have to walk on eggshells. And part of the problem is it's two people and then me. Like it'd be better one-on-one. But if we had a setting where I didn't have to choose my words so carefully for fear of getting booted. Like we can just speak like two normal human beings and not one person go on for 4 or 5 minutes talking. Like if they know anything about me, they probably know I hate bloviation. Who's blocked here? Accidentally? They wanted you to act who they perceived you to be. You proved them wrong by calm dialogue. Well, no, actually, I want to commend Stephanie here, who's on that other channel talking right now, who's probably trashing me, but I don't care. I commend Stephanie because if it wasn't for Stephanie, I wouldn't have got on. I'm quite sure of it. But Stephanie, on more than one occasion, has really encouraged me as a mod to call in. And so today I did. And I think they even bumped me up in the queue. I don't know that for sure. I think my guess is there was people waiting longer than me and had to wait. Yeah, Jerome, it worked out because they did it later today for some reason. They usually start the show at 11 or 12 my time, and today it was 3. But if you came late, I played the whole thing, unedited. I stopped it a few times to talk. Will I make short clips? Will I make short clips on that? I'm just reminded of something, a short clip I could make on that. Yeah. And so
No, that's not what the fact that
These fools are just like, man, they're forcing their beliefs down my throat. Fucking leave town square, brother. You get to say.
yeah, I made the comment that people on the left tend on average to be a little more emotional or thin-skinned than people on the right. And look at the response. I think you're being a little hyperbolic. I do think tougher skinned, and it goes both ways, at least somewhat. But I do think that people who lean right are a little tougher skinned, and so
no, that's not what the fact that
These fools are just like, man, they're forcing their beliefs down my throat. Fucking leave town square, brother. You get to say what the fuck you want, and I get to say what the fuck I want about what the fuck you said. That's also some entitled bullshit. Holy fuck, cry me a river, change your goddamn diaper. And Doug's, I mean, I respect that about Doug. Like, he has no fucks to give. He's just like, yeah, I don't care that you think that I'm a wimp or that I'm whatever.
there is a need. So I could make a clip of Arden and this Mati guy, and me saying people on the left tend to be thinner skinned, and then have them just F this, F that. Okay, yeah, Jerome, I'll unblock you on the main religious channel. I wrote it down. I don't remember what you were banned for. Was it that day I was in a banning mood? Probably. But no, you're a good guy. Most people who email me, ask nicely to be unbanned, I unban. I'd say at least 70-80%. Rami, you want me to unban you too? Do you remember what you did? Were you a bad boy? I think with Jerome, did you say this is boring and then I banned you? Or was that somebody else? But Rami, I don't remember what you did. Yeah, I'm sure your mother has told you you're a good person. Ethio19, acknowledge me, Doug. Or I will be in mental agony. Okay, I acknowledge your existence. Oh, just to let you know, Arden and Ben were scheduled to come on the show and talk about trans issues, but we ran out of time.